Google Plus, a Google Hangout with Osnat Dror, who is my former Israeli host sister from many years ago. I'm not going to go into how long ago that was, but I came and stayed at your home in Ramat Gan many years ago. What do you remember about that? This was a pleasant visit that I remember.
Yeah, it was definitely a pleasant visit for me because it was nice to get a U.S. Student, staying in my house. But I think that the most important thing is that this visit gave you, as a U.S. citizen, the opportunity to see the Israeli lives. I would say that I don't want to say how many years ago it was, but like 20 years ago, I would say that the situation in Israel was a little bit different, maybe, and now I would say it's much safer being in the Israeli street or visiting Israel, definitely. But you see, unfortunately, we have still the same neighbors. So when something happens, we can't avoid it. So we are in a crazy reality right now.
When I was there, and here's where I'm going to date both of us, it was during the first Intifada, correct? So there was activity between the Palestinians and the Israelis at that point. And I brought up something to you that you actually didn't remember, and this stood out to me because nothing like this had ever happened to me before. Nothing has happened to me since, but it was my 18th birthday. We were on a bus. We were going to my birthday celebration, and all of a sudden the bus stops. Two Palestinians had gotten off the bus and left a box behind, and they had to call the bomb squad. And I remember being terrified. And this has always stuck with me, but you say, that happened all the time back then. You don't remember it.
Yeah, well, we are talking about more than 20 years ago when there was it was the first Intifada. There was no limit or border, or as you know, there is a wall now between the Israelis and the West Bank. So now, I mean, back then it was crazy days. There were bombs all over, in buses especially. It was terrified. And when you mention it, and I didn't remember actually, and this is correct, it's not that I have been in so many cases when we found the special bags or packages or whatever, but we always, we grew up into reality when we know that we have to have our eyes opened all day, every day, and it can happen. And this is something I think that it was unusual 25 years ago, but I think during those days, it is relevant to every country or every place around the world. This is not something the extreme Muslims or the Islams is something that was back then 25 years ago, something really unique when you came to visit Israel. But when you go in big cities all over the world, not only in Israel now, you have to keep your eyes open. You saw it in the U.S. in 9/11 terror attack, and there's so many other places and situations. So I think that because we are used to it, our sensitivity, I'm speaking about civilians, I'm speaking about the advanced technology that we have. Generally speaking, about security, we are much more ahead than most of the world because we have such a bad experience. So this back then was terrifying. I think now it's terrifying all over the world. So we are not unique now these days, unfortunately.
You mentioned the wall that went up about 5 to 7 years ago, and you had said to me before that Iron Dome went up about 3 years ago. Tell us what Iron Dome is, and you in fact saw it in action on an early morning run. Both of us are runners.
We have an alarm now. Adela, I'm in an alarm now. Okay. Adela?
Yes.
I'm going into the shelter. I'm calling you back, okay? Bye.
Okay, bye. You had an alarm. You came back pretty quickly. What happened there?
When we have an alarm, it means that a missile, a rocket was targeting towards my area. So we have to go into the shelter or find a safe place, stay there for a while, like 10 minutes. And when we actually see in the television that the rocket was explode somewhere or was stopped by the Iron Dome, you know that you can go out.
So it must be safe now. You came out fairly quickly.
We came up very quickly because we actually got the report that it was stopped by Iron Dome somewhere in the center of Israel, not far from Tel Aviv. So we understood this is not our place, so we can go out.
So tell me a little bit about Iron Dome. When the alarm went off, I was trying to ask you about Iron Dome. You've actually seen it in action. You were on a run one early morning,
yeah,
and you saw it. What did it look like? What happened?
Actually, we see the Iron Dome not every time. I mean, not every time that we have an alarm, the Iron Dome is actually working, because we are not getting an alarm for every rocket. The Israeli territory is now categorized by areas. So basically, it can be that there is a rocket going not far from my area, because when analyzing the path of the rocket, it means that there is no harm to the area where I live. So basically we don't get an alarm. So sometimes we don't get an alarm, but we hear the bombs outside because it was stopped by Iron Dome, but it's in a different area. Generally speaking, the Iron Dome, it's a rocket protection system. When it sees or gets the signals of a rocket going through a specific place, the Iron Dome is actually a rocket going and destroying the rocket that is targeted on Israel, and the rocket is destroyed in the air. So basically, no harm is there's no harm to civilians, because it explodes on air. But then you have some, parts of the rocket that can fall out of the skies because of this explosion. So basically, it looks like a big fireball that is going and chasing the Palestinians' rocket, and it's blown up in the air. So you have a huge mushroom at the air. So we have now around 8 or 9 systems spread all over Israel. But the most important thing is that the Iron Dome is not chasing or in action for every rocket, because we can analyze the Palestinian rocket's path. Once we see it is going to a civilian area, then the Iron Dome is working. In other cases, when it's going just in fields and there is no harm or danger to civilians, this system is not working. It's not in action, because there is no reason to waste missiles when nothing is going to happen anyway.
Is this the reason why the Israeli death toll is much lower than the Palestinian death toll?
Definitely. I mean, until today, we had only 1 person that was killed in those 11 days. But the Iron Dome, on one hand, this is the best thing happened to Israel, because it protects our people. We are confident in the protection that we have. So basically, people are, you can find people going in the streets having something like normal lives. But on the other hand, because we have this system, and we, thank God we don't have so many casualties, so it looks like we are the bad guys because nothing happens to us. And on the other hand, we can see in the television so many, people, civilian Palestinians getting hurt or killed. So the balance is that they are the poor ones and we are the strong ones. But if we didn't have the Iron Dome, I think that it would be a nightmare. People would die here because they are targeting specifically to civilians. It's not like, there are terrorists that we are trying to chase, and they are hiding within the people of civilians, children, and women. This is targeted definitely for women, children, babies, not soldiers. And if we didn't have the Iron Dome, so it would be a real nightmare here in Israel.
And I wanted you to show me the app on your phone again real quickly, but let's talk about that. There is definitely a voice here in the United States that says we should not be supporting Israel, that we should be supporting the Palestinians. What would you, as an Israeli citizen, not involved with the government in any way, what would you say to that?
I would say, as I said before, what would you do as a citizen or civilian in Houston, Texas, when you have fires, rockets, and falling and targeted on your house? The Hamas is basically a terror organization. They are targeting civilians. They are not targeting the soldiers. Their aim and their target is to hit and to harm citizens, civilians, nothing else than that. On the other hand, when we have no choice and the Israeli army has to defend its people, they are going and following and trying to attack the terrorists. The Hamas are hiding between their people, between the women, children. They are sending them to be actually the soldiers for them. The Hamas headquarters is where are they? They are hiding in shelters below the ground. They are not going up because they know that they are the ones that we are after, not the women, not the children, but Hamas are using them as human shield, and we cannot accept that. This is not normal that people here are living in fear, getting rockets on their houses. This is not a normal situation, and no one, no country, no person could get this and accept it for himself. And the people that are not actually seeing the full picture, because what they see in the television or in the web is the poor and the poor people of the Gaza Strip. And by the way, they are really in a very bad situation, and we are really, our heart is with them because they have no Iron Dome, they have no shelters. They are really revealed and for a catastrophe. But the Hamas are not. They are not worried about them. They are still using them as human shields, and they are expecting us, the Israelis, to have to stop a attack or do nothing while they are actually attacking civilians. The fact that we are much more, let's say, progress than them from a technology point of view, and we have the Iron Dome, this is the reason why we are in our situation and not in a mass or a real catastrophe with hundreds of people dying here. This is the only reason. Otherwise, and we are not, we don't need to be the weak ones in order to get the attention and the support of other part of the world. I think that I just read, in my smartphone, we are connected to the news 24 hours a day, that we have the support of the US, we have the support of Germany, we actually have also the support of Egypt, who tried to get a ceasefire with Israel.
Right.
We agreed for this ceasefire, but the Hamas are the ones who are not willing to accept it. We had a humanitarian ceasefire yesterday for 5 hours in order to provide food and supply to the civilians in the Gaza Strip. We got the ceasefire. The Hamas continue targeting rockets to Israel. This is not a real country. This is and this is not a real government. This is this is a terror organization. Abu Mazen also cannot have any negotiation with them. So basically, I mean, I think it's not our privilege, but it's our obligation to defend ourselves. And as I started, no one and no country would accept this situation for itself.
How would you respond to people who say that Israel has oppressed the Palestinians, not Hamas necessarily, but the Palestinian people?
Israel is defending itself. It's true that the civilians in the Gaza Strip are really in a bad condition. But let me tell you something. Millions of dollars and milliards of dollars are going into the Gaza Strip. But what are they doing with this money? Do they get any progress to the education for the condition of the people, to their situation? No. They're taking all this budget, millions of dollars that they are getting to get more weapons, more rockets, more missiles. This is what they're doing. Are you aware that the supply of water and electricity for the Gaza Strip is coming from Israel? You know that they have millions of dollars getting from other parts of the world, and they are not paying for their electricity. They are not paying for the water. We are, the citizens of Israel, who are paying our bills every month, have to pay also the debt of the Gaza Strip people. We are paying them for the electricity they are using in order to throw rockets on our heads. This is insane. No one could accept this situation. And we can say that we are not humanitarians. The millions of dollars they are getting, it's coming back to us as rockets and other equipment.
I hear the voice. You get very passionate about this.
I'm getting very passionate because when we are trying to be super sensitive, when we are trying, I don't know if you're aware, before the Israeli Air Force is attacking every area in the Gaza Strip, before that, the civilians are getting messages. Please get out of your house. We know that there is weapon inside, or terrorists or whatever. Please go out, because we are going to attack your house. And the Hamas are not allowing them to leave their houses. This is insane. Before the ground invasion, they got a message: please leave your house. We are getting in. The Hamas stopped it and said, you are not leaving your houses. They are getting the points of being so poor and seeing the dead children, and this is their weapon against the PR of Israel. So why should they there is a statement that was said 40 years ago by the first woman who was a prime minister in Israel. Golda Meir. And she said, when are we going to have peace with the Arabs? The moment they will love their children more than they hate us, then we will be able to live in peace. And once they are sending their women and children to protect a weapon and protect, their hiding places, we cannot stop our protection on our country, because they are playing dirty games. This is definitely dirty games. Where are the millions of dollars they are getting? What are they doing it? There is no security budget for the Gaza Strip. 100% of the budget they get from Qatar, from other places, is invested in weapons. And this is going into our places. By the way, I don't know if you know, the ground invasion now, the first target is the tunnels. Do you know they have tunnels?
You have tunnels going from the Gaza Strip. I've read something about this, but don't know much.
Yeah. There are thousands of tunnels that the terrorists are getting into Israel to have, to attack civilians. there are not, there is no, they are not saying that they are going to, for a real war, because they don't have a real army. They are attacking only civilians. This is their target.
Show me the app on your phone again. You showed me you have an app that tells you about attacks.
Yeah, this is called Red Code, actually. This is an app for every
Right.
smartphone.
Pull it back just a little bit. There we go.
And we get because Israel was split or categorized by areas, so we get for every rocket or every alarm we get a sign and a message. So basically, time now is in Israel. It's 9:57 p.m. and I can see that at 9:44 there was an alarm in Ashkelon. In 9:44, there was another in an industrial area near Ashkelon. In 9:43, there was another alarm near Ashkelon. So just be aware how many alarms one person can get. So basically, it's like every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, there is alarm somewhere in Israel.
And your daughters, you said you were surprised that this was the first time they had gone through something like this. And how are they coping?
Yeah, actually, this is crazy because, a normal person outside of Israel, when someone said, I hear alarm or I hear the siren, so it said, of course, this is the first time. I mean, this is not a typical situation. But, yeah, I was actually, when I saw their faces and their fears, and then I understood this is the first time that they hear a real alarm, I was surprised because, as I mentioned, in the south of Israel, people are used to get alarms like in I wouldn't say daily business, they are on daily basis, but it's going, like periods when you have some quiet. But in Ashdod, which is something like 40 minutes from my house, there are periods like they have, 5 to 6 times a day. When I was a teenager. Actually, when I was a soldier, when I was 19, there was the first Gulf War. Then we had rockets coming from Iraq, and I was used to it. So for me, it's like a deja vu, so I'm not that scared. But for children, this is a terrifying situation. My children, my daughters are 9 and 13, so basically you can explain, they understand what they have to do, but you should try and explain it to a 2 or 3 year old child going to a kindergarten and hearing the sirens and needs to lay down on the floor, keeping their hands on their heads in order to protect it. I think this is a trauma, and for me, I guess maybe it's a protection, maybe, psychologically, that I get it like, it's like, okay, we will gonna deal with it, but it's not easy, especially when you have small kids. But I can tell you that, generally speaking, when we speak about the people in Israel, since we are tired, sick and tired, and getting attacked on Israel, 100%, almost 100% are behind the government decision, and we know that we cannot stop. We are willing to accept this situation with sirens, with alarms, with getting into shelters. But if this time the situation is going to be solved, but totally solved, not for 6 months or 1 year, so it's worthwhile. So I mean, this crazy situation must stop. We cannot accept it anymore.
What do you think is going to happen coming out of this ground invasion? And differently, what do you hope happens?
Well, this is very difficult. First of all, a ground invasion means that we're going to have soldiers hurt, injured, and even killed. So I would say that the ground invasion was for us the last option, because we don't want to see people killed definitely not soldiers. I think, and this is not what I hope maybe, but I think that that eventually there's going to be a ceasefire by a diplomatic agreement. The only situation, the only problem is that actually we don't have with whom to make any agreement, because even if the Egyptians are for it, trying to negotiate, and Abu Mazen is trying to negotiate, there is no real, I would say, normal and not insane counterpart to deal with. I guess nobody wants to see us again in Gaza Strip. We know that we shouldn't be there. We know that we don't want to see soldiers getting injured again. This is a hurtful period that we had years ago, before we went out of this Gaza Strip. But I hope that the diplomatic agreement that we will have, I don't know whether it's days or weeks, will be permanent. And both sides, by the way, the Israelis and the Palestinians should live in quiet. I mean, both sides have civilians, human beings that shouldn't pay the price. I think that the real face of the Hamas is now being revealed. Also in the Arab countries, they understand that it's like this is not really someone to negotiate. They are not willing to get anything. They are in a really bad situation right now. Although most of
Hamas is not going to negotiate. Is that what you said?
I'm saying that the Hamas is now in a very bad situation, because first of all, the Gaza Strip is, I would say, you know, there are so many attacks by air from Israeli Air Force. Now it's by ground. The Gaza Strip is a mess. Definitely, I won't say it's a playing the ground. You know, it's a real war going on out there. Here we have the Iron Dome. They don't have it. So houses are falling apart. People have nowhere to sleep. People are hurt. People are injured. I really feel bad for them. But on the other hand, the Hamas are not willing to accept any diplomatic agreement. So what I hope basically is that Abu Mazen will get also control of this part of the Palestinian Authority, and then we will have someone reasonable, someone that we can discuss the situation. Because, you know, in the West Bank, you should divide it. The Palestinian Authority, it's not Gaza Strip, it's the West Bank. There, I would say people have very good life. They have a high, I won't say high, but reasonable standard of living.
In the West Bank, you're saying in the West Bank they have a reasonable standard of living.
I have the West Bank, yes, definitely. And I know people from the West Bank. I also had the times that I had business with them. I can tell you that they are coming into Israel quite frequently. I won't say we're best buddies, but definitely there is respect. The Gaza Strip, which is being led by the Hamas, this is something totally different. By the way, if you will discuss about the people from the Gaza Strip with the people from the West Bank, I can tell you that what their reaction will be very similar to mine. This is a nightmare in the Gaza Strip. The Hamas is definitely not don't want this area to be successful, or I mean, it's very easy to lead depressed people who just want to have normal lives and not more than that. So I wish the Gaza Strip civilians to choose better leaders than what they did right now.
Why don't you think Hamas wants peace with Israel? What do you think they want? What do you think Hamas?
I think they're, first of all, I know what they're asking now right now for ceasefire, and let me tell you, they are dreaming. I would say, after 11 days beneath the ground, they probably didn't see what's happening in Gaza. I think that Hamas is, let's say, generally speaking, they want us out of here. This is why, actually, if we're speaking about jihad, even if we're speaking about Adela, which is like a ceasefire, at the end of the day, I think that they want the Israelis to be out of here. Now they're asking for support, for money, to open all the gates between the Gaza Strip and Israel, which I would say should be reasonable, unless we know that those gates they will use it in order to bring bombs and weapons into Israel. So if you would negotiate with a normal leader, consider those. But when they're speaking about poor people that have no food and have no water, and they need to get into Israel in order to work, you understand what is going behind this. So you understand this is not something that we can accept. When before they were getting into Israel with a weapon in their galabia, with bombs, in order to kill civilians. So I guess open gates and open transformation, transport into Israel, it's not an option anymore. So I hope, and now I think that also the Arab countries all over the world understand that the Hamas is not a real leadership to negotiate with. So it's a problem.
All right. Is there anything else that we've been talking for a while? I mean, never mind me trying to figure out how to call you, because this is my first time in a video hangout. But you have covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that is important to you in this conflict as an Israeli citizen that I haven't touched on?
I think that the main thing is, first of all, that what we ask for is just some quiet and normal life, like every other country provides to its citizens, not more than that. And I wish that all the people that are against Israel and its activity now would feel and would have, just 10 minutes here to see the alarms, the fear of the children, people living in the middle of Tel Aviv or even Haifa. It's not like soldiers on the border who are afraid and get missiles. Just think of it like it was you instead of me. What would you do? Would you say, I'm doing nothing because we want to be nice to the one who attacks us? Or would you protect yourself? And I think Israel has the right to protect itself. This is what I'm saying.
All right. Well, thank you, Osnat, and say hello to your brother Oren and your parents for me. It's been a long time since I've seen them, and I appreciate you agreeing to do this video chat with me and talking about what it's like to be an Israeli citizen right now during this conflict.
Thank you for hearing it.
Always. All right. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.